Can you tell me where?
Eu sou Kelvin Araújo, estamos aqui em mais um vídeo do nosso canal. Antes de eu falar do que se trata, eu peço para que vocês adotem o procedimento padrão que eu sempre peço a vocês, deixarem o like, ativarem o sininho para as notificações, se inscreverem no nosso canal caso vocês não sejam inscritos e nos acompanharem em outras redes sociais. Facebook, PROGLand, Instagram, prog_land, o nosso site, nossa conta na Groover, né, onde recebemos plataformas, onde recebemos resenhas para avaliarmos músicas e tudo mais. Se você é um artista e tem música e quer enviar a nós, por favor, nos envie por lá. Nossa conta é PROGLand também. E por fim, mas não menos importante, por favor, nos sigam em nosso site também. Nos sigam acompanhando lá tudo que a gente está postando no nosso site proglandmusica.wordpress.com. Introdutório feito, eu vou falar um pouco sobre a entrevista que nós gravamos hoje, mais uma entrevista internacional. Até agora só postamos entrevistas internacionais aqui no canal, né? A partir dos próximos vídeos teremos mais coisas nacionais aqui para vocês também, né? Junto com as internacionais que continuarão, enfim. E o papo de hoje foi com o Andy Tillison, né? Músico, multi-instrumentista, produtor, um dos nomes mais conhecidos do prog nos últimos 30/25 anos, né? Para quem é mais inteirado no prog atual, o Andy Tillison é compositor líder de uma das bandas mais prolíficas e mais geniais do gênero nos últimos 20 anos, que é o The Tangent, uma banda que reúne elementos do sinfônico, do jazz fusion, do progressivo clássico, com muitos elementos mais novos também e tudo mais. E nessa entrevista a gente fala basicamente sobre a trajetória dele no grupo, a trajetória da banda, incluindo seu mais recente disco até o momento, do Follow Polaris, alguns spoilers sobre discos futuros também, discos importantes da carreira da banda no passado, com destaque a dois que nós falamos, o disco A Place in the Queue, de 2006, e Massacre du Travail, de 2011, um álbum conceitual também maravilhoso. E também falamos um pouco sobre outros, falamos até sobre o início da trajetória do grupo, através do seu início, etc. Como foi as colaborações nesse inteirinho. E se você também não conhece nada do The Tangent, eu suponho que você veja essa entrevista. É uma entrevista fenomenal com o Andy Tillison, se debruçando sobre muitos assuntos universais nas mais diversas esferas, assuntos relacionados e não relacionados a prog, sociedade hoje em dia, a sociedade de consumo na música hoje em dia, a disputa punk versus prog, muito também do tratamento que as pessoas têm perante o prog ser um gênero antigo, o saudosismo e etc. Momento que todos vocês assistam. E é isso. Fiquem agora com a entrevista. E por favor, não nos deixe de, se você gostou, compartilhá-la com quem você puder, com quem você quiser. Fique agora com a entrevista. Bom vídeo a todos. Fala pessoal, estamos aqui em mais uma entrevista no nosso canal, uma entrevista que eu queria muito fazer aqui, com um cara, um músico multi-instrumentista, produtor, tudo que vocês podem imaginar. Andy Tillison here. Thanks so much for your acceptance, for your patience, for everything.
I think you were just as patient as me, weren't you? But anyway, yeah, hello and hello, everybody. I'm sorry I don't speak Portuguese. Not a word, really, but so English or French, that's about all I can do.
Yeah. It's a very hard language, so I definitely not condemn you to not knowing Portuguese. Portuguese is a very hard language. There's a lot of themes to cover in this interview. It's all about your career, about especially the Tangent career.
First of all, I like to beginning this interview to talking about the recent Tangent album, Follow Polaris. I mean, I have to ask something about this record. A lot of things, but something that always intrigued me. This new record was released as the Tangent for one. The
Mhm.
Tangent for one is I mean, since the Tangent existed since 2003, there's your work of parallel or 90 degrees, you work at solo, but this time you recorded a solo record playing everything by yourself, something that you have done before, but recorded and released it as with the tangent monkier in a certain way.
Right.
What made you create something to be released under the tangent name instead of your solo name? The style of compositions and stuff like that. And I would like to take this question to do a sort of hook to another question. I know that the process of creating the Follow Polaris was a little bit difficult to you, to say the least, because you had a hearing problem during the beginning of the songwriting composition process. Yeah, I hope it's got better by now. And I imagine that it must have been a slower process than usual, added to the fact that the lack of availability from the members, from Jonas, from Tel, to the recording. So I'm using these different questions to make a bigger question. How was the writing process of this album? Was the most challenging process of creating an album, analyzing your whole career, because you have so many boundaries all over the way. You have the hearing problem, you have the lack of availability from the other members and stuff like
Mm.
that.
I think it, I just have to sort of say that obviously the group at that particular point weren't available. And I write at a kind of certain speed. And I think that, I'm constantly writing new material. Even when I'm finishing one album up, there's new material for the next one on its way.
Oh,
And of course, realizing that I wouldn't be able to get the band to play on this one, I kind of thought, well, we're going to end up with more material than we know what to do with in the future. So, I decided to go ahead and do an experiment and make the album with just myself. Because I thought it'd be an interesting thing to play. I thought I'd learn from this. I will take something new on board and find out more about what the other people in my band do, and understand them, and be able to write better for them when it comes to the time when we can. And no surprises, my friend, but we're already recording the next one, and that's with the full band. So that's if they've most of it's done now. So we're well on the way. But it wasn't a solo record. It was it quite clearly is. I'm the only person who played. I did the artwork, I did the lyrics, the complete musical thing, the production, the mix, the whole lot. But I did it as if I was working with the band, and it's that kind of music. It's the same style of music as the Tangent. It was me writing with my, as we say in England, with my Tangent hat on, and it wasn't me doing acoustic songs. It wasn't me playing electronica. It wasn't me making a jazz fusion album. It was a Tangent record, and so that's how I progressed with it, really. And of course, it's given us the chance to keep the name out there, keep another release in our normal schedule, and be able to start this new one that we're working on at the moment. And we're still together doing it. Yeah, that's sorry, that's the long and short of it. It was a fantastic experience. There were some real difficulties recording it. Yes, I did have and always will have now, a problem with hearing, and that was something that started noticing in my life as we went into as I went into the recording, and I had to go and see professionals about it and get myself sorted out. And of course, now I am sorted out with, I've got a lot of electronics going on in my ears. So I've got, glasses on my eyes. I've got things in my ears. I'm not going to say anything about the teeth, but I've still got my hair. So, I'm not doing so bad, really, Lots of things.
But you are doing fine with your hearing. I was really worried because I have seen an interview that was a little bit of you have slept for a night and all of a sudden in the next morning you weren't able to hear nothing. It was like that.
It was really frightening, I will say. It was just terrible. It was just like sort of suddenly I couldn't hear things anymore. So I had to go. I mean, and the thing is that I know this isn't forever. In the end, I probably will go deaf as I get older. But the great thing is it's not today. So I've managed to write 2 albums since it started to happen, and hopefully there'll be more. I mean, this is what I live for, obviously, is making records. But I'm not a pessimistic person, and if I will find other things in life to do if hearing stops me from continuing with making music, But there are other things that I'm interested in doing from an artistic point of view, which I will do. So I've been able to hear music beautifully for 60 years, and I hope to continue doing so. But if it happens, I've had 60 years, which is a lot more than some people ever get. So I'm lucky.
Yeah. So the record was released. What kind of feedback do you have from the band members? They got surprised. I know you talked to them. No, I will release this as a one man, the Tangent record. I mean they got no annoyed by it. They
No,
got fine
no.
with that decision. But what was the reaction from them after the album was complete? They got surprised. They got.
They were
What was the reaction?
They heard it. They thought, "Wow, that's not bad." They were quite nice about it. Of course, we're very good friends.
Yeah.
Myself and the group, and they were all out there in the world making money, being in different bands like Steve Hackett and Karnataka. I can never say that band's name. Karnataka and Soft Machine. These people, they were out there doing that, and they didn't want me to sit down and do nothing whilst I waited for them to come back. They wanted me to make some money, so I made my own record, because that's it. I'm not a session musician. I do play occasionally for other people, but I'm not that kind of guy. I'm a composer, and I needed to compose, and that's it. They let me do it, and they were fine about it. Luke and Jonas both listened through to my first mixes and gave me ideas of how I could sort of turn the treble up a bit, turn the bass up on the bass guitar, all that kind of stuff. They were very helpful, and we had no problems about it whatsoever. And we just come back and we're making this record, and there's nobody saying, "Oh, that time when you went away and did a record without us." It's not like that at all.
Yeah. it's always good to have that unity on the group, because I mean, I love the first Tangent records that was you and other collaborative musicians and stuff like that. But since the last decade, when the band became the Tangent became a proper band,
That's,
I
that's very
always
much.
love even more the records, because it has a sense of unity. Each member had brought their own personality to the music and stuff like that.
I think that's really true, and I think the thing is that a lot of bands start off, and most of them think their classic lineup is the first thing they did, but when you think about it, that's not actually the case. The lineup of Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, Mike Rutherford, that wasn't what they did first, and the first lineup of Yes wasn't the lineup we all know. Same with King Crimson, or and the Tangent were like that. We started off as a one-man solo album, because that's what it was, and then we added these fantastic musicians who I didn't really know, and whilst all those other musicians at the time had other things that they wanted to do, because they were already taken, three of them were in the Flower Kings full time. One of them was in Van der Graaf Generator. And the thing is that clearly couldn't continue, but I wanted the band to continue. The record company wanted the band to continue. And I was really surprised, but Jonas Reingold wanted the band to continue. And, we've been working together now for nearly 25 years. And it's been probably the longest musical relationship of my life, that, along with Theo Travis, who joined us very soon after. And because of the fact that this was all happening at a point in our lives, we weren't kids on the block, rehearsing in a garage, forming a friend. We had to find each other, and it took a really long time. But I think in 2014, we made a record that was me, Jonas, Luke Machin, and Theo Travis. At that time, we had Morgan Argelen on drums. We made that record, but I think that was the beginning of what I think of as the current lineup of the Tangent. Because 2 albums later, Steve joined us, and that's the lineup that has made the records Proxy, Auto Reconnaissance. It's made the lady the one that's called Songs from the Hard Shoulder. I always call it the lady tied to the lamppost, but it's Songs from the Hard Shoulder. And of course, we went and toured as well with that lineup. So it's a nice lineup. I love it, and that's the lineup that's making our new album right now. Yeah.
Oh, you're recording now a new record?
Yeah.
It will be released this year. I don't want you to spoil too many things, but I need to ask that. So
we are recording a record at the moment, and although I can't make any promises, it would be really good if it got released this year, which means that it's possible. Yeah.
You guys in the fair. Now I'm asking a sort of songwriting way. You guys now in the phase of jamming and selecting beats, or you already had a part of the track list selected?
Well,
for this new record?
What happens in the Tangent, because every band's different, but the Tangent works like this, is that I'm the guy who does do most of the writing, and for the past few albums I've done all the writing, so I start off here in this room where I'm sat now, with these keyboards, that keyboard, those drums, and the computer in front of me, and I start to build up the compositions for the next album. Now, at the same time as I'm doing that here, Jonas is, is doing the same thing for a Car Mechanic album over in Austria, and Luke's composing his solo record and everything like that. And then when we've got to this point where I've got the framework of a record that I want to put out, then I put it out to the rest of the band.
Oh, yeah.
And now the thing is that the rest of the band then come in and do what they need to do to it. They do what they want to do to it. This is not me saying, this is what to play, here's the music.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, I give them the recordings and say, what would you like to do with this? And they do what they want to do on it. They write their own parts. They contribute to it. And, you know, I think the fact that I've selected well and chosen the right people to work with over the years means that that process is pretty damn good right now, you know, because I think that Jonas finished our new album yesterday, and I don't think that there's a single thing that I'm going to change that he did.
He's extraordinary player.
And Steve came here and set his drums up in the room next door here. He was here in January, and we recorded those drums then. And I'm very, very happy with that. Luke's currently finishing parts of his work off. That'll take another little while. And then at the end of April, I'll be recording Theo Travis's parts here. So, you know, it's it's a different way of doing it. No, we don't get together in the studio and work out what we're going to make an album. I decide what we're going to make, and then once I've decided that this is going to be the record, then I put it to the group and they decide how that record will sound, you know. So that's how it works.
Lyrical wise, I mean, over the last 10 years, one of the things that I most like in Tangent in comparison to other prog bands is you guys have absolutely no boundaries in being political, in talking themes and regarding things in music, in your music, about the life, about social life and dilemmas of society that we're living in. Lyrical wise, this new record still maintains some of the themes in politics as the previous one, the Follow Polaris.
The thing is that I think there's a lot of people think of progressive rock musicians as having been progressive rock musicians all their life. But I actually wasn't. I liked progressive rock a lot when I was very young, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. That was something I absolutely loved and still do love. But for me, when I was 17, everything was about punk rock. And so was I. I absolutely loved it. And I'm one of the few people who, at the age of 17, was able to go and see Yes play live and the Sex Pistols play live the same year, you know? And I enjoyed both gigs enormously. After that period, of course, you know, from the age of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, it was all about people like Joy Division. It was about people like the Pistols, the Buzzcocks. It was about XTC, it was Talking Heads, and all those kinds of music. And after that, you know, rather than turn into a kind of fan of later Genesis, which was never my thing, I turned into sort of like I was getting more and more into anarchist punk rock. I was getting more and more into you know, sort of like the first thrash metal bands and that happened in the 1980s. People like Voivod from Canada, and people like Crass, Discharge, Chumbawamba. These were bands who were very influential to me, and yeah, I'd always liked the idea of protest singers, from Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, and people who sang against injustice. And this is something I've always wanted to do. And so for a while in my band Gold, Frankincense and Distro, it was a very politically charged band. And then I just decided that I wanted to start revisiting some of my other interests in music, and that's progressive rock music, which I love, and particularly bands like Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and all the jazz fusion music like Return to Forever that I love too. Just because I was playing that kind of music, I thought that doesn't mean to say I have to leave politics behind because I'm playing a different kind of music. No, this music can say just as much as punk rock can on this subject. So, gradually, slowly but surely, I experimented with introducing more of the political content into what we do. And there are some people who hate that, and there are some people who absolutely love it. So, you just have to lose the ones who hate it and gain the ones who are surprised to find a progressive rock band singing a 20-minute long epic about Brexit. That nobody expected that.
Yeah.
I think when Brexit happened, everybody was expecting punk bands to suddenly resurface and start singing protest songs about Brexit. It never happened. They were left with a bloody progressive rock band, and they didn't know what to do about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a kind of relief for you as a songwriter to having this freedom is a sort of way, because there's a lot of bunch of people, stop talking about politics, stick to the music, as they talk as a they think that the music is always separated from the social. This is quite strange, this kind of thought, but anyway.
Well,
And
I've met these people many times, of course, and it's a valid point of view. Yeah, they have their view that they want entertainment, and why. But my thing is that I've never been here to provide entertainment. I'm an artist. I'm sorry to big myself up in such a way, but and artists often bring their protest about things that are happening in the world forward through their art, their paintings, their writing, or their music. And I just decided that this is what I will do. And the point is that for me, the most important thing I do is the lyrics and that's why I get up. That's why I do this. If I didn't have that conviction, the things I wanted to say, I would be doing something else. I wouldn't be doing music. So the thing is that the people who complain about it, I mean, there is an off button. You can just, if you like, just put on your old favorite records from the past and pretend they have nothing to do with politics. Some guy complaining about the tangent singing about politics is quite welcome to go and put on 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is a song about Donald Trump, recorded in 1968. It saw him coming. Now, if that's not politics in music, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the people need to know that politics, social things happening in world, in every countries, in political movements, is a part of life, and as a part of life, it all can be music, it all could be in music. But the people only wanted, especially in the prog scene, there's a lot of people who always thinks that the prog is only surrealistic things, characters from the 17th century or stuff like that. So it's a kind of relief for you. I ask it because you're probably I mean you're the only one who does that with such big public, because the Tangent has an audience, had a fan base. It's a kind of relief to broke that that expectations, and creating your own musical style and lyrical style, because I mean the political, the social lyrics, the social verge of music in Tangent, it's so unique, it's so good, because nobody does on prog like you do.
Well,
It's
I mean,
unique.
obviously, it is one of, you know, every band's in a search of its unique selling point, USP as we call it here in the UK, and I suppose that although it was never intended as being our unique selling point, it just happens to be one. I mean, like, and people gravitate towards it, and the great thing is that it's not just people who are on my side of the political argument, and I think you can probably gather that I'm a pretty liberal kind of guy. I don't really like authoritarianism. I don't really like kind of right-wing politics. I'm a bit of a pinko liberal, okay, but the thing is that the band does attract people who are interested in this kind of music. And I have a number of people who you would call Republicans or conservatives who are on the center right of politics, who essentially find quite a bit to disagree with me when I'm writing their music and the lyrics I provide. There are things that they disagree with, but they're things that we've ended up talking about together. And some of them write to me and discuss this, and I discuss it with them. And, you know, I've made some very good friends out of people who aren't necessarily of my political persuasion. And the thing is that if we're uniting people and bringing people from different political ideas together to talk about music, to talk about politics and stuff, there's just nothing I can see wrong with that, because, you know, the world, I've decided now that, you know, because I used to write about politics on the internet, but I think there's no point anymore, because it's just become this sort of sea of, yeah, it's like an old English pantomime where, you know, somebody in the audience would go, "Oh yes, it is," and somebody on stage would go, "Oh no, it isn't." "Oh yes, it is." "Oh no," you know, it's reached a point where it's become like that. And I look back in time, and I thought, well, okay, back in the day, there was this guy Neil Young who wrote a song which was very critical of the way that the southern part of America had been involved in slavery and some of the persisting views of that were still hanging on in the South of America at the time in the 1970s. He wrote this song called Southern Man, which was quite critical of the Deep South. Now, the thing is that nowadays it just gets slaughtered by people from the Deep South going, get rid of that. I can imagine it. But what had to happen back in those days is, instead of everybody just writing on social media, another band had to sit down and think, how do we answer this? And they answered Neil Young with their own piece of music. And that piece of music was Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. And that was their answer. And that answer was so much better than some of the stuff we're witnessing on a daily basis. I mean, even the people who are on my side of the political debate, I'm reading the things they write and thought, that's horrible. Don't say that about people. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, it's so I guess that, you know, I'm just trying to provide music that makes people think about a situation. And I mean, if they disagree, that's fine, of course. You know, I'm a great believer in freedom. Of course I am. You know, I'm not trying to make anybody agree with me. It's
Yeah.
just that's reprehensible, is that kind of thought. But I'm just putting a point forward and let people see what they make of it and see if I can contribute to the world in some small way. That's it. And my contribution will be on the records, not on comments boxes. That's all.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. No. It's way better. It's way better sometimes. The most of the times, actually. I'd like to talk now about the compositions of this late record, Follow Polaris. Not all of them, but some of them. And the first one I would like to talk is Fine Line. I like it how it literally traces the fine line dynamics between power, media, politics, and perception. It questions how much we can trust the narratives and that we consume, and warns about the constant risk in living in a world when the line between the truth and manipulation and the lies has become so thin.
I think that,
And at the same time, the song suggests listeners to a constant search for the truth, for their own truth between this dilemma. And of course, there is a political game on it. But I would like to bring up another perspective, and I would like to see if you agree with me or what points you can relate on that question. Do you think that in such a chaotic world today, people end up seduced by the illusion of an existing truth that instead of facing the reality of avoid hurting themselves and became more mentally unstable? Uns- Does lying and manipulation to you became an antidote to for a society that's increasingly tired and sick each day? Because I ask it because it relates a lot of that dispute of narratives that you mentioned that make you get away from the social media, stuff like that.
yeah, I think that The Fine Line was actually the first song I wrote for to Follow Polaris, and as such, it's quite old in terms of, you know, it's about 4 years old. I think I wrote that song, and we were in the middle of the Joe Biden government in the USA, and over here in Britain, we were dealing with people like Boris Johnson and I think that before that, and particularly during the first Trump presidency, we'd started to see, you know, almost day one of Donald Trump's first time in office, this sort of, hey, we don't know what the truth is here. And at first we kind of thought, no, this won't last long. And then we realized that gradually this is the new normal. People are just going to lie to us, and some people are going to believe that lie and say everything that we say is a lie, and in the end there will be no truth. And through this album's To Follow Polaris, I mean, you're probably going to ask me about the track itself, but like, you know, this idea of the North Star being constant, it's sort of like trying to find something in the world that you can actually know is true. And as a metaphor for that, I use the North Star because it's always there and you can't dispute it. Even if you're a flat earther, you cannot dispute the fact that the North Star is there. And so it's a very good example. But you know, the idea being, I kept on waking up every morning and reading the news, because I always do, and I read the news. I listen to the news on the BBC. I read a paper called The Guardian, and like, you know, the news was just always so bad. Just, you know, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible, and everything. And of course, then some people were saying it's his fault, and they were saying no, it's her fault, and she was saying no, it's his fault, and they were saying no, it's their fault. And then in the end, they were just saying it's your fault. They were pointing to us, me, Democrats, liberals, people who vote for the Labour. It's your fault. You're the deep state. You're the evil one. You're Darth Vader. And I go, no way am I Darth Vader.
It's like that.
And I think that, you know, during this, I began to realize that, because I'm so glad. I mean, the album was released over a year ago now, and I got Elon Musk in it. I was right about him, because it says all the tyrants, all the dictators, all the Musks, they've got the power, but they don't fool us. And I'm so glad I saw that one coming. That was quite nice. So it's this song about being manipulated by the very media that we're using to get the news into holding certain beliefs, and shoved down the road saying, oh yeah, you go over there, you're in that slot, you go in there, that slot, and then we'll get these people to shout at you, and these people can shout at them, those people, and you can shout at these people. And I thought, I don't want to shout at anybody. I just want to live my life. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to have a fair chance to enjoy the life they have on this planet. And I want us to look after the planet so that people who haven't been born yet can enjoy their life on this planet. And I kind of think that in recent years, the idea of somebody who wants everyone on the planet to have a good life and be fair, and people who live on the planet in the future to enjoy their life and find something great to live for here on planet Earth, people like that are being described as sort of deep state, evil, liberal, radical.
Yeah.
I'm not radical left. You know, people in the USA have no idea what radical left means. I mean, they never saw Stalin. I mean, that was
Not only that, I live here in Brazil is exactly like that. You live you're absolutely a normal person. You don't like violence. You just want to live your life. You're evil. You're from a left-wing extremist.
I mean, sorry, that's complicated. I mean, you had to deal with Bolsonaro, didn't you?
It's like that. It's like that. It became a trend all over the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
that.
Yeah.
Here in Brazil is like that. You live a normal life. You just want to you just want to live your life. You not agree with absolutely basic things like violence. I don't like violence. I don't like fights. I don't like certain kinds of living way. There's nothing to do with politics. You're left wing. You're extremist. It's impossible to figure out what this kind of people have thought. Because
That's very much what worries me, and that's really why I wrote The Fine Line, because, you know, I just wanted to be able to, you know, to sing a song that unites people and brings people together, but find that, you know, that when you do that, you get shouted at for being the wrong political flavor for whoever's listening to it. So, you know, that's all I can say, really.
Another track that I loved was The Anachronism.
Well, that's
huge piece. I love it. Where did the idea for recording the letter from the BBC, which features on the track, and I really enjoyed that part, came from the idea of recording that letter to BBC. Was it something like, I mean, in my perception, was something like personifying beyond the lyrics? Uh,
I mean, I was just sort of like,
creation of the
just to
world in that.
explain to people who are watching this who maybe don't know what that letter is that the letter
Oh, yeah.
was written by a young person, a lot younger than me, you know, in their probably late teens, early 20s, and there'd been a lot of people complaining that oh, young people today, they don't know they're bored, they're always complaining about something, and all that sort of stuff, you know, very kind of older conservative people, sort of older, I mean people younger than me, but like, you know, there's and this person was saying that, you know, that ever since they could remember, there've been financial crisis is happening now, potential war happening now, potential famine happening now, natural disasters happening now, this, that, and the other, just one thing after the other, after the other. And essentially, I kind of thought that people, young people growing up in this atmosphere of fear, and it's not just a potential war, it's a potential, you know, asteroids, everything, they're completely being bombarded by, you know, sort of like potential nasty events that could sort of like apocalypses just on the horizon all the time. And you only need to look and see that so many films and television programs are about life after a catastrophic event, young people striving to survive amongst the ashes of a bombed out city, this, that, and the other. And, you know, there's part of me that kind of wonders, would that actually be some kind of relief for them, you know, if it was all over and everything was quiet and they were just sort of left in ruined cities with no Bolsonaro's, Trump's, and Viktor Orban's and these kind of guys, Putin, shouting at them, telling them what to do. And, you know, so I was quite moved by this speech, you know, kind of thinking, gosh, is that what it's like to be a young person now? Is that what they're having to? And you know, I was writing the piece at the time, and I thought this has to go in. This just has to go in as part of it. And of course, that, you know, that once I'd put that in, that fired me up for, you know, other lyrics in the song. Like, you know, there's a bit in it where I say, all over the world, millions of kids go to sleep with Putin in their dreams. And how does that feel, Mr. Putin? That children are having nightmares about you.
Wow.
So that's kind of it was quite an important thing there. I was just making tea, and I was making a cup of tea whilst when that came on, and I stood there sort of stirring this cup of tea, which was gradually going cold, going, good God. Yeah. So yeah, that was how that one came about.
Yeah. The lyrics covers critical, not only in political camp, but of course in the music industry camp too. Something that the Tangent has done all over the discography since the beginning, of course. And one of the things that that really was a highlight on Follow Polaris in that uh, field was "I Like in the Darkness." The song conveyed a feeling of disillusionment and a reflection of the superficiality, especially, I mean, in the musical realm, the musical camp. Of course, you have touched on these themes of criticism of the music industry, and I like that the tangent has make these critics relevant, actualize them, make them actual. In the music, you openly talk about how the value of the music is ephemeral, is measured today by status on social media and the internet of those who make it, which is actually true. But at the same time, I would like to ask you, don't you think that the music today really connected to the thing of the internet, to the facilities of the internet, could be a blessing and at the same time a curse? Because do you believe that there's more ease space to artists to promote their work more freely than before, in the time of the old record companies, when they had to join a record label, hope for promotion, cross fingers to have a contract signed, wait for budget, stuff like that, which often, in a certain way, you was part of that, which often, in a certain way, lead to an sort of artistic dictatorship too. Or you think that today dictatorship in the internet, following the image of the artist on social media, dictating the value of the work they done, is worse than this kind of older dictatorship? I don't know if you mean what I'm asking.
No, I do. I understand what you're saying, and let me make it quite clear that
I ask it because I know that you an artist who has lived and still live through these both phases in the industry. So
yeah,
it's interesting to see your point on this question, these phases on it.
I think that it is a very difficult question to answer, because it's very easy to fall down because what you said is it's a blessing and it's a curse, and nothing could be closer to the truth than that. I mean, the first thing is that without the internet, the tangent would never have existed. It would never have come together without the internet. The internet made it possible for us to discover people who wanted to listen to it, and it led us to discover how to do it between a band who didn't live anywhere near each other. We lived in different countries, but we came together and made an album using the internet as a way of transferring ideas between ourselves, and made a record. And with PO90, which had come some years before, we had found a way of letting somebody who'd never heard of us at a completely different end of Britain hear our music without having to buy a record, without us having to cut a record, he had been able to hear us because we posted an MP3, and we posted that MP3 the day after the software came out. Now we still think to this day that we were the first band ever to put an MP3 online, and of course, there was the blessing that we introduced ourselves to people who'd never heard of us before. We had an internet website where we wrote about progressive rock music, and we didn't just write about ourselves. We wrote about other people who were making progressive rock music, and people came to our site to discover things about progressive rock music still being made now. And they found us, they found Magenta, they found other artists that we were writing about, and that was an interesting way that at that point in life, I didn't realize that it would end up with bands with their own websites. I don't know how I didn't see that one, but I just thought, no, it's all about being
Like
collaborative.
Jetsons.
Yeah. So this is, it gave us so much, but then of course there were very, very exploitative people who turned up on the internet shortly after. I mean, like, naturally, the first thing we had to deal with was things like Napster and Kazaa and everything, and people were sort of just downloading all the records in the world illegally. And some people did that, some people didn't do that. And I guess that then after that, Daniel Ek decided that, okay, I'm fed up of being a criminal now. So basically, he just managed somehow to carry on being a pirate, except this time with a fantastic lawyer who has made Spotify legal, which has just totally and utterly devalued the financial value of music. Hasn't devalued the value of music at all, but it's devalued the amount that any musician is worth. So at this point in time, yes, I make a lot of records, and a lot of people listen to those records, and a lot of people like those records, but I don't get paid a lot for making them. And the thing is that I've never wanted to make a lot of money out of music. That's never been the reason why I do this. If I wanted to make a lot of money out of music, I would not be making progressive rock music records. I'd be doing something else. I'd be working as a hip hop producer behind the scenes, and I'd be working with, sort of like bright young things, making fantastic videos, and I'd just be playing the keyboards, But that's not what I want to do. So I'm having a good life.
Yeah. But it's something that you touched upon the theme of streaming platforms, and there's a lot of debate over the artists about the paying of platforms, the fair playing of platforms. Some of them say that's unfair, that's too few for an artist, and some of them say that had a great fees on by the Spotify and stuff like that. Personally, do you think that streaming is a blessing for the industry?
I think it could be. But it's just ridiculous. I mean, the amount that Spotify pays out to the artist is so unbelievably low. People just don't believe it. But I read an article, it's a couple of years old now, but like that they actually calculated that if you were, as a musician, wanted to earn enough money to be on a equal financial footing with a front of house McDonald's guy, okay? So the guy who serves you a burger, puts in the bag and says, "Thank you, have a nice day." If you want to earn as much as that person, you need 1 million plays a month on Spotify. 1 million plays?
1 million. It's an absurd, to say the least.
That is, I mean, I'm nowhere near 1 million plays on Spotify. I think that, I make most of my money by selling hard copies of what I make, because I've got an audience who are of the age they want to have the CD. They don't just want it as I don't know about the ones who presumably are listening to me on Spotify, but I don't know them because they don't order records from me. So it's I've got nothing against it. I had a Spotify account for a while. I thought it, as a consumer, it's one of the best things I've ever come across. $10.
Don't you have anymore? Don't you have anymore?
No, I decided no, this is not right. It's like giving $10 every month to have access to just about all the music that humankind has ever created for $10. That's just not it. That's just not right. You know, it's and
It's really
you know,
unfair, you know. It's really too cheap.
yeah, it's
$10
and of
to
course
have
I
that
get the
access.
people. I get the people who'll say, "Ah, yes, but people who are listening to this, they might find you because yeah, okay, they might, you know." But I tell you what, I'd be absolutely right behind it if they just give us 10 times more than what we get. If they gave us 10 times more what we got, it might actually be worth it. But the thing is that people don't realize how small that amount of money we get is. It's not 1 cent for a play. It's not 0.01 cents. It's lower than that. You know, basically you need several 20 plays before you get a cent. It's that kind of figure. I can't remember what the exact thing is now. All I know is that I don't think I've earned enough off Spotify yet to buy a copy of all my albums. So in quite a long time. So it's not great. It's not great.
No,
They
no,
just
definitely not.
It's a fantastic idea. For the consumer, it's absolutely wonderful. For Daniel Ek, it's absolutely amazing because it's made him into a billionaire. But for me, as one of the artists who gets shoved on Spotify, well, it's absolutely terrible. I'd rather Spotify did something and stopped being a pirate with a lawyer and started becoming a genuine person who's interested not just in the money, but in the whole future of music and making sure that the people who make music are rewarded for it, because it's a legitimate profession. I mean, the king in the medieval days, the king used to pay the musicians to play at the court, you know, and they got to sit next to the king. So
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Absolutely. But I ask about streaming, and one thing that I like that the bands have been creating over these last 10 years since the foundation of Spotify, their own streaming platforms with only their music, and the fans could sign that platform and having access to all the records and all bootlegs, official bootlegs, musical videos and stuff like that for a fee. Marillion does that.
yeah,
Do you think that in the near future, the Tangent and your work, you and the Tillison, merging the work that you had on Tangent, 9 Degrees, and your solo stuff, you could
yeah.
launch proper streaming from you, Andy Tillison, Spotify, stuff like that.
I think that I can't say anything huge about it, but apart from my work in music at the moment, I am working on a very big project which would like to see an alternative way for Tangent and bands like myself to work and communicate with people outside the framework that is provided by Facebook, Twitter, all the other various different social media people. I think that I remember a lot about how we used to reach people before there was ever social networking. You know, before that even existed, we found ways of finding people, and I think that I was one of the first people there on the internet. You know, I was fully on the internet with a website running 1994. You know, so that's a long time ago now. That's 31 years. And I remember a lot of the techniques we used to use. And in many ways, when Facebook came along, it was kind of like, oh, great, we can now let somebody else take care of this, the actual operator. We can reach all these people now. But the thing is that just like in the fact that everything became meaningless when people started shouting, oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it isn't. And suddenly lots of bands saying, we're the best thing since sliced bread. You know, it's not going to work. You have to sort of like communicate more than some nice pictures and, yeah, great rehearsal last night, guys, rock and roll. It's more than that. You have to sort of say why it is. You need somewhere you can communicate to people what you have that you are offering them, and it's more than just cool pictures, you know. It's and that's it, and that's where we are. So I'm looking into sort of like providing the Tangent with its own kind of kernel where everything is stored, where people can discuss the Tangent, where people can make friends with other people who like us. And going back to my original premise when I first started doing this on the internet, that it's not just going to be about the Tangent. It's because that's what's spoiled it so much, is that instead of working together as a movement of people in progressive rock music, we've become just a load of different artists who are trying to push ourselves. And to me, that's not how this originally started. It's not how it happened in the 70s. It's not how it happened in the 90s. This is, I think, a step we need to take back to reestablish ourselves as a group of people with a common aim to make this music, rather than just certain bands, you know.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be important, you know.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Speaking of lyrics, I would like to know about you as a lyricist. And I love how direct you are as a lyricist. You didn't
That's kind of you. Yeah.
you didn't age a lot of metaphoric figures and stuff like that. Loads like other names and other lyricists. It seems like the lyrics hardly change from your mind. They're almost like an immediate transcription of what you're thinking, or you're and stuff like that. I would like to ask, do you usually, analyzing throughout the Tangent discography on this record, do you rewrite a lot of lyrics after an initial lyrical idea? Was there any that took a certain amount of time to complete?
When I first started the Tangents, I was still writing lyrics in a traditional way. I was kind of like writing a piece of music and thought, I need some lyrics to go to that. So what I would do is I would sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, and I'd write some lyrics, and I'd go, does this fit? Does this fit? Does that? And I'd be there, and I'd write it with a pen. And then when I did it, I'd get it all typed up, and I'd get a lyric sheet, and I'd put the microphone in front, and I'd sing from the sheet, which is what I've always done. It's what an awful lot of people have always done. There's nothing wrong with that way. It's a perfectly good way. But the first thing I need to say is that I don't like my voice. I don't like the sound of my singing, and I'm not a very good singer. And that's something that I don't see as a problem, because this is rock and roll we're playing. It's not bloody Italian opera, you know.
Yeah.
And like, I don't believe that anybody in the band needs to be trained to be Italian operatic or conservatoire trained. The fact is that the musicians in the Tangent are really bloody great, but that's in a way, that's not the only reason why they are playing what they are playing. It's because they understand the music, and that's a more important thing to me. Now, I always wanted to try to make my voice sound nicer, more interesting. And of course, what I was always striving to do is tell stories, put forward thoughts and questions to people. And I want those to be as understandable and delivered in as natural way as possible. And like, you know, I mean, I really don't know, but like, you've just been listening to me talk for about half an hour, probably more, probably an hour by now.
Wow.
I've got a letter here, which is from the government about my pension.
Yeah.
and I'll just read from it now. And it says, get your state pension. If you would like Braille, British Sign Language, a hearing loop, translations, large print, audio, or something else, please telephone this number. Now, immediately, it sounds like I'm reading.
Yeah.
That sounds completely different from the way I'm talking. And I started to think about this. Thought, I'm reading. I'm not speaking what I thought. So I thought, well,
Yeah.
all I need to do is memorize what I'm going to say. And I did it, but it still sounded like I was reading. And then I started reading up about some kind of freestyle rappers and in hip hop and stuff. And people who do real-time, one-time lyrics. And there's this band in the UK called Groove Armada, who I'm very fond of, who had this guy who was actually talking about freestyle rapping, about one-time lyrics and things like that. And I thought this sounds really interesting. And so around about the time we did our album called Le Sacre de Travail, I started the idea of just setting the microphone up and starting to sing and to see if I could actually write the lyrics as I sang them, so that the whole thing was like me talking but singing at the same time. And of course, it means that there's a lot of bad takes, because not only do I sing them badly, but I also say words that don't sound good. So I keep going back, but in the end, what comes out is actually me speaking and singing. In other words, I'm enunciating the words. I'm actually speaking in a random way, because, you know, I've got no idea what this last sentence that I've just said, I would never be able to say this sentence again, ever, because it'd always be different the next time. I would never be able to say this sentence again, because it's probably going to be different the next time. You know, that's it. I bet those two aren't the same. They'll be similar, but they're not exactly the same, I'm sure. And I found that doing this gave my voice, it didn't make it any more in tune. It didn't make it sound any more professional. But what it did do is it made it sound more natural. It made it sound like I meant it more than before. And I think on that particular record, that's it. I've done it like that ever since on nearly every track. So so the lyrics, the first time I ever write the lyrics down is when I'm doing the album cover. I have to listen to the record and say, okay, what did I say here? And I just type it out. You know, I type it out from the record. And
that's really unusual.
But it's not. As I say, rappers have been doing it for quite some time, you know. But
really, they use that?
Yeah, rappers they just go for it. Some of them, freestyle rappers, they just go for it. They just go, hey, da 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 down the disc, da da da, this, that, and the other. And they're just saying all this amazing stuff, and it's coming out really fast. Just train.
No, I was asking about the inspirational thing about after the cover that you talked about the cover that you always fought on your lyrics after the cover.
Yeah, so that's it. It is funny that I actually write the lyrics for the cover when the song's all recorded. In fact, I just did it for our new album the other day. I kind of thought, well, it's that time of the year again. I need to listen to the record. So I just go and I sit here and type it out. You know, what did I sing? Okay, I sang this. The first line of the I was, we were. You know, I just type this out, and then I look at what I've typed, and then I rearrange it into the lines of poetry that it is basically supposed to be, and that's it. You know, but it was never written down until that moment, ever. So, not since Le Sacre de Travail. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a great strategy. I would never in a million years would imagine that you do that. So I was pleased to hear that. I would like to use it as a hook. You cited the Le Sacre du Travail, and I for me, consider that record the band's masterpiece. You know, I could say that for a lot of albums, but anyway, uh, which the title means the coronation of work. I think it was this
It's the
translation.
ritual of work. It's the ritual
Yeah,
of work. I mean, obviously, it's based. The title is kind of stolen from Stravinsky's piece, which is called Le Sacre de Printemps, which means the rite of spring. And essentially, what I wanted to do is Stravinsky had written this about sort of life of the workers in the countryside in America, in Russia in springtime, and he'd wanted to portray what life is. And I kind of thought I would like to do a portrayal of what life is like in England with people going to work. So I came up with the idea of the rite of work, and that to me was the concept for that. So yeah, the rite of work, the ritual of work. That's what it was called, really. Yeah.
uh, how was the process of making this record and the title piece? I think it's genius how the narrative of critical of romanticizing work and bringing the listener to the perspective of enjoying life more. I love that concept. I believe that it's as a listener, I say that as a listener, you can say that you can confirm or deny that as you wrote it and you arrange it. I believe it was one of the most demanding pieces musically for the band. It was or it wasn't?
It was a fairly big piece. I mean, it's a colossal thing. I mean, the thing is, it was the band's first sort of like proper adventure with orchestration, and it was also a large scale double album conceptual thing. And as a matter of fact, that's what the new album is. It's kind of like another sort of equivalent kind of style orchestral piece that follows Le Sacre de Travail. And Le Sacre de Travail is basically looking at one person's life during one day. Yeah. Whereas the new record is looking at a whole generation's people, a whole generation's life for 65 years. So, you know, it's looking at a different time frame, but it's still focused on what I would say you. It's focused on me. It's focused on a lot of people who are around about my age and will have had similar experiences, but people who have, you know, you're obviously nowhere near as old as me, but you've come into a world where you know a lot of records that came from that time as well, so you'll understand a great deal of it. Yeah, it's got all the orchestras in and everything just like that. And yeah, this one's been difficult too. It's been a real challenge. It's had some of the most complex music we've ever attempted, a lot of instrumental music, and and once again with the lyrics, one-time lyrics that I've been doing ever since Le Sacre de Travail. So this is kind of our second concept album, which is, you know, it's about time we had one. It's been 12 years since we did a concept album, so this will be the next one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this one. Next year, 2026, A Place in the Queue will celebrate its 20th anniversary. Personally, I consider this record one of the best of the 2000s in prog and in the rock scene in general. It's really beautiful record. What memories do you have from that recording? From analyzing now 20 years, almost 20 years, 19 years ago.
Yes, it's 19 years ago, and it is. I think that, you know, a lot of the Tangents fans hold that among their favorites, one of their top. I've had quite a lot of people say it's the best. A few podcasters have said this is the best album when they've done the rankings thing. To me, that was a hugely important record. It was one that I had to get right. I had to put everything into it. And the reason for that was that The Tangent was always supposed to be a record that just made one album. That was it. It was a coming together of these people who didn't know each other. We made this record. That was supposed to be it. But it did very, very well that year. The Music That Died Alone did really well. And Inside Out offered us all a good deal to make a follow-up for it. And we did make a follow-up for it. And it was pretty good as well. I thought that the second one, I wasn't so keen on it at the time, but now I listen back to it, I kind of think, yeah, that wasn't so bad. But I don't think it was as good as the first one. But it did a job. And after that point, you see, because like at this point, everybody thought that you see, Roy Stolt was, you know, the big guy, you know, and Roy Stolt said, I can't carry on with this because I've got to get on with the Flower Kings, and you know, so I just sort of said, that's it, you know. I said very happily, thank you very much. It's been absolutely great. I'm prepared to disband the group and just go back to being PO90 and Andy and all that kind of stuff. But I was very surprised because I got a phone call very soon afterwards from a rather tall Swedish gentleman who went, "Oh, I've got no intention of leaving the band," in his imitation English accent, and so Jonas persuaded me that we could carry on without Roine. And so we changed a few people. We went and got a kind of drummer with Jaime Salazar, who had once been in the Flower Kings, and Zoltan Turs went back to being the Flower Kings drummer. Roine went back to being the guitarist in the Flower Kings, and we found different people, and we had to make this.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is a question really related to what you're saying. I would like to ask, how did the process of choosing who would participate on each work begin on this first records of The Tangent? Did you write and make the demos and the scratching of the song in a certain way, thinking exactly about who would play them on the record, apart from your collaborators, Jonas, which was really a collaborator full-time with you? Or did that happen after the song were ready? Because you had a lot of different collaborators, David Jackson on this first records, Jako Jakiski.
Well, after the very first record, the first person who said that they couldn't do the second record was David Jackson. And the reason why he couldn't do that record was because he was going to join Van der Graaf Generator again. They were going to get back together again. Now, they're my favorite band, so I wasn't going to complain about that. So the reason, when I started making the album and writing the songs for The Music That Died Alone, I had no ideas that I would have Roine, I would have Jonas on, but essentially a friend of mine, Ian Oakley, sent a demo of what I'd been doing to Roine and said, interested in playing on this? And Roine listened to it and said, yes. And then Roine said, who's playing the drums? And Ian said, I don't know. And Roine said, well, Zoltan could play them. And then, who's playing the bass? Well, I don't know, said Ian. So I said, well, Jonas could do that. So suddenly I had 3 members of the Flower Kings, and we were making this record together with David Jackson from Van der Graaf Generator, who I'd managed to get in touch with because I know Hugh Banton from the Van der Graaf Generator. So, you know, so all this had actually happened, and there'd been no plan to get those people, but suddenly I had them, and suddenly I had a runaway kind of hit progressive rock album in 2022. And then after those 2 albums, I really thought it was all over. And Jonas said, no, we can do another record. And so we actually went out and made this second record, the third record. And of course, I knew, well, this is it. You know, if this one's good, we can go ahead. Now, at this time, you know, I just started to write this piece about the RAF pilot, Ernest, and I just wanted to make this record as good as I possibly could. And, you know, because we were making this record and Royner was gone, Zoltan was gone, David Jackson was gone. There was me, Jonas Rheingold, Theo Travis, and a drummer who'd used to be in the Flower Kings, Jaime Salazar, and a friend of Jonas's on guitar. That was Christer Johnson. So we were nowhere near as star-studded as the original lineup had been, because I was basically just me, and we had Jonas. And of course, like a lot of people say, oh, Royner's not involved, I'm not interested. And we just knew we've got to give him a hell of a record and make it really me. And so that one, we didn't rush that one. We just had to get it right. And I think apart from, you know, there were a couple of tracks which I thought, nah, I wish we hadn't put them on there. But I think we did make a really good record with that one. It's a good record. It's placed in the queue. You know, and In Earnest, I think, is probably one of our best songs, the most, because, you know, despite being, it has its politics to it, but it has this sort of like very human side where it's all about one person and one person's experience of, and yes, he was a fighter in the war, which kind of a lot of people have a lot of respect for, but he was badly treated by the government after the war was over and all this kind of stuff. So I was able to get the politics through without causing too much controversy on that one. And it's probably the most important album in the career of the Tangent as a band that continued, you know. Without placing the queue, the Tangents would be judged entirely on one album or one album alone, the first one, which would have been you know, it was fine, but we had to become more than a side project of the Flower Kings, and I think we actually succeeded because of that one album. Yeah,
The band has become acquire own life after that, in a certain way.
Yeah, I think
in a certain way now, total way.
Yeah, I mean, like we're just finishing off. We're just working on our 14th album.
Yeah,
So that's not so bad.
yeah. Another record that I loved from the Tangent was Proxy. I think it was that one. I love it a lot. One of the most interesting, to say the least, lyrics on that one that record was, for me, Suppers Off, where you talk about the hard time that the prog fans has in abandon that zeitgeist, that nostalgia from that period. And I would like to ask that because over the course of the discography, the Tangent has merged into different kinds of production, different kinds of musical styles on the records itself. It's not only a progressive rock; it has other influences, and it's really cool because you had a rainbow of different sounds,
nice,
different genres.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I would like to ask about, what do you attribute to this exaggerated nostalgia from prog fans for the old 70s period, the thoughts of, oh, only the 70s that matters in prog and in music and stuff like that. Is this nostalgia for a time, is it a nostalgia for a time they wish they had lived more through, or for being a zeitgeist? Do you think it's because the music was effectively better than what's made today? Do you think they had these 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 thoughts, and these thoughts are fair? Can this nostalgia be broken? Do you think that the younger generations are more open to new names in progressive music? I would like to ask that, because I have seen some quotes from you on other interviews about this theme, and I was pleasantly surprised on reading your thoughts on this topic.
Well, there are some unavoidable human facts which are about kind of biology, puberty, growing up, and things which define who we are and what we're doing at certain times in our lives. And you know that people will always have nostalgia, and a large part of that nostalgia will always be for that period as they're coming out of puberty. They're discovering members of the opposite sex for the first time. They're discovering their own sexuality. They're having their first drink. They're having their first drive in a car. The moment as you make that jump from being a kid into being an adult is a hugely formative period in your life. And there are things that you're gonna take from that period, and you are never gonna forget them. And that's the same for me as it presumably is for you. You will have a completely different set of those stimuli from when you were young and what you were listening to at the time when you first decided you were going to sort of like ask a girl out, ask a guy out, whatever it is. They are all going to be hugely important moments. And of course, for me, at the time, I started listening to progressive rock music when I was 12 years old. I bought Close to the Edge when I was 12 years old, and I was there for every subsequent Yes album release until I finally decided they're not making music that I would like to hear anymore, which was some years later. So I was just there, and of course I bought all the ones that had come before because I wanted to hear what they'd done before, and I built up this thing. And because of the age I was, it just happened that at that crucial age of being 17, the you know, those really important years when you're discovering who you are as a person, that punk rock had arrived in the UK, and this created this division of people saying, oh, you're either going to be a boring old fart listening to all that progressive rock stuff, or you're one of the exciting new kids who like punk, sorry. And of course, I was just going to say, I'm going to like both. There's just no way. I can't say no to all this really exciting stuff with kids who just thrashing guitars on the stage and being fantastic. And I'm not going to give up Yes for that, you know? So I just decided I'm going to enjoy both. And I did. I really did. And it's not as if the punks didn't progress from day one. They were just straight off, you know. The Damned had an epic out within just about 4 years of starting, and Public Image Limited was certainly not a punk rock band, but it had Johnny Rotten in it. And, you know, it just went on. Talking Heads were really interesting. XTC just about were a prog band by the time they finished. You know, it's very, very difficult, though, to disengage people, because that's so exciting part of people's lives when they're at that age is suddenly followed by the great reality trap. You know, they might have their first children, they might have their first mortgage, they might get their first really important job, and suddenly they're in that world of le sac de travail, where instead of it all being about them. It's being about servicing mortgages, making sure the children are picked up and all that kind of stuff. And that period of time often serves as a kind of watershed between the time when you were taking in the world and you're suddenly working against the world for a long, long time. And that's why I think that, you know, just from the people of my generation, that if I decided I was going to want to go and see the Flower Kings in London tomorrow, there'd probably be a crowd of maybe 200, 300 people, which would be pretty good. They might even make 500 if they'd done a really good amount of work on the publicity and everything. But like, you know, but Steve Hackett, Steve Hackett can do that with 2,000 people every night for 15 nights all over Britain, you know, and that's because his songs hit people's hearts at the time when they were making that journey they were discovering themselves, and that it stays with them forever, that moment. Just like, you know, my memories of hearing Yes for the first time, my memories of hearing Van der Graaf Generator for the very first time, and hearing XTC for the first time. These are just huge things, and I have tried to keep myself fresh and to listen to new music, and I always have done. But then again, I've always been a musician, and like, you know, maybe I've had a life that's sort of allowed me to let more in, which is my privilege rather than their error. But yeah, of course, it's really disappointing to think that, you know, the Flower Kings pull in 500 people in London and Steve Hackett brings in thousands, but he can only bring in those thousands if he plays the music that I used to know when I was at school, when I was a schoolboy. The songs that Steve Hackett plays live on stage are the songs that, you know, went with me and with them through the rest of their lives. And of course they want to hear them again, you know, but I also just wish that more of them knew about the new guys, like myself, the Kings, the big trains of this world, you know, that more of us could actually come. But people used to ask me, and have asked me many times in interviews over 25 years, I've been asked this question. They say, what do you think has changed the most about progressive rock music since it started? And my answer has always been the same. The thing that's changed the most is the audience. And, you know, because they grew up.
Yeah.
And
you have a younger generations on
yes,
these shows. I'm 23 years old and I loved it, and I enjoy it. I couldn't enjoy more things in life than being in a show from Steve Hackett here when he played here in Brazil in 2023, and it was absolutely I nearly fainted. It was really
well,
emotional.
he's had me in tears a couple of times. I was in tears, I think 3 gigs ago when I saw him, and he did Firth of Fifth, and the guitar solo in that was just so beautiful. And just suddenly, as he was playing it, I just suddenly just saw my whole life going back. I just saw it. I just saw I think, you know, I remembered being in the school sixth form common room, listening to that record and thinking, wow. I thought, everything I've been through, all my children growing up, my grandchildren being born, I had a heart attack, I got sacked, I lost girlfriends, I found others, and suddenly, you know, here I am. And I thought, no, I was 63 at the time. I think, now I'm bloody 63 years old, and this music, and I was just in tears, crying over it.
Yeah. This
And
is really good.
and the same thing when Nad Sylvan did he performed the Chamber of 32 Doors at the last tour, and it was just that bit where it was that every step takes me back, and I just, oh my God, that's just pretending that I was I've got a bit of a cold. It was just amazing. So this music will always mean more. And I'm writing progressive rock music for an audience who will always, every time, judge us against what they experienced then. And it's very difficult to come close because, of course, I've been writing progressive rock music in my way now since the 1970s, but you had to be doing it in 1973 to really have made that mark. So that's why Pink Floyd, Genesis, Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer are the absolute
Italian people,
masters of it. Oh,
banda,
yeah.
muito,
I love
Miramis.
Yeah. So I mean, I love all these bands. I really do. It's PFM are one of my favorites. And I met them the other year. It was lovely. It was a very nice experience. I actually played a concert with them in London. I was the support act, just myself, as a solo artist. I was the support artist to PFM. I was exceedingly happy.
Yeah, another tune that in a sort of using that you were talking about, how well do you felt looking at it and having that, activating your time machine in your mind after hearing those chords, those solos. One of the coolest tracks from the whole discography of the Tangent was Cut Pieces and Capes, which was a diving into the nostalgia. And it has a lot of details from that memories from that ELP show in Newcastle Hall. And where did the idea of making this track, this specific track, came from? I ask it because there's a ton of old memories from that, and all of a sudden you decided, after all these years, you decided to include them in a song, to write a song out of it. That's a pretty cool idea.
I think it's something we've done from time to time, because when I was first starting the Tangent off, there were certain things I kind of thought I wanted to try to make us a little bit different. And the Tangent were in England at the time, and we were all getting absolutely bombarded by Swedish guys and Americans being better at prog rock than we were, right? And I'm kind of thinking, this isn't right. In Britain, it's ours. We started this. We need to get back to what it was that we were good at doing. And my first thought was that, right, okay, since the 1970s, one thing that's been completely missing from progressive rock music is jazz, because jazz was there all the way through, from 21st century Schizoid Man onwards. Jazz was there, and then it didn't have to be there, but it was there. But when Marillion and IQ and Palace and those guys arrived in the 1980s, they didn't do the jazz in the same way. I mean, they did some, obviously, but it wasn't as big a part of the music. And I wanted to bring that back. So I brought that back into the band's music. And I forgot what the question you asked for.
No, I asked it where the idea of
that's
song
it.
came from.
So that's it. One of the other things that I wanted to bring to the music was this sudden idea I had. And I think I was quite drunk one evening, and I was thinking about, and a record came on the radio, and it was a really old 1950s song, right? And it was the B-side of a song called At the Hop, which was a band called Danny and the Juniors. So this is a 1950s record, and the record goes, rock and roll is here to stay, it will never die, it was meant to be. And I thought, this is a rock and roll song about rock and roll. And then I thought, what other music does that? And I thought, disco does that, Yeah, disco house, get down on the disco floor, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. We spent the night in Frisco at every kind of disco, that kind of stuff. It was really, and I thought, well, has anybody ever sung, made a record where they sing about prog rock?
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm gonna bloody do it. So the first one obviously I did that on the Music That Died Alone. And in many ways, the album that Cod Pieces and Capes is from is called Spark in the Ether, but the subtitle is The Music That Died Alone Part 2. So I wanted to have a track on it that sang about the music again. And
That's the peak of meta language.
I just wanted to sort of like try to rediscover the spirit with what I was feeling when I was so excited about this music. And at the time, people were sort of like slagging off Emerson, Lake and Palmer for being pretentious and everything like that. And my memories are not of pretentiousness at all, but all about this really exciting fusion of music that came from so many cultures. They were taking a piece of Russian classical music, blending it with blues rhythms, and blues scales, which came from sort of like the black community in South America and in the southern part of the USA. They were blending it with Bach. They were shoving funky rhythms in with it, and there's just this fantastic fusion. And I kind of thought, what is there wrong with this idea? It's things being pushed together that don't belong together and made to work together. And how can that be pretentious just because it's got a bit of classical music in it? I always thought that classical music and classical musicians were very, very snotty about rock musicians at one point. They were very snotty about us. The problem is that we were just as snotty about them. And the music press really had spent their life writing about rock and roll bands, and then suddenly they were being asked to sort of write reviews of symphonies that Yes were writing, and they kind of didn't like having to do that. It was a bit outside their ball game, so they're just like, it's pretentious rubbish. But it wasn't. It was just this amazing coming together of so many different ideas, this melting pot of music from all over the world. It was a fantastic thing. I absolutely adored it, and I still adore it now. I love hearing a band like Gentle Giant who could, merge something Spanish, Moroccan, put it together with something that came from 600 years ago, and then add a mellotron and a synthesizer, and it sounds fantastic. What part of that is wrong?
And they could lay down a R&B or funkier tone to the rhythm section from Ray Shulman and John Weavers and Malcolm Mortimer too. In an absolutely marvelous way. They had a really funkier, almost R&B flavor on it.
It's the groove. I mean, this is another thing that we've always wanted to do in the Tangent, is have groove. And of course, that's why we did the song The Adulthood Lie on Proxy.
I love that track too.
Well, that's the one we thought that was the idea. We decided we would try to make a track that was a progressive rock song, that had all the sections, the tempo changes, the themes. Everything was going to work just like a progressive rock song, except instead of being made out of progressive rock music sounds, it was going to be made out of kind of 1990s, early 2000s dance music sounds. We were going to use drum machines. We were going to use pulse synthesizers. We were going to use super sine wave bass lines. We were going to do DJ effects. We were going to put samples in. And that was, as far as I'm concerned, that was probably the most fun thing we've ever done, putting that together. I absolutely adored doing that piece because, we were breaking all the sort of rules of progressive rock music, using DJ kind of techniques, and a lot of people won't have liked that, but a lot of people did. And what we did is just prove that the song is what carries it. It doesn't matter about which instruments are playing it. It doesn't matter what kind of instruments are playing it. General Giant proved that years ago. And the thing is that the progressive rock bands of the 1970s were looking around at the world around them and fusing together television theme tunes, jazz musicians, classical musicians who existed then. And when we started, there was 30 years between us and them. And we had 30 years of new music that we could be influenced by. And we weren't going to rule that out just to sound like a progressive rock band. We just thought, well, we can take this as well, because, Yes would have done. And Emerson, Lake and Palmer would have taken from what they were hearing now if they'd started now. And that's how our philosophy has been all the time, really.
Yeah. I would like to ask now about a sort of curiosity that I had from you. You've collaborated with many musicians in and out of the tangent, but is there any musician that that you would have liked to collaborate in a tangent record, but it didn't happen?
Yeah, I recently got to collaborate with somebody. I never met them whilst collaborating, but it was a bit of a dream come true. I've recently played on a record with Simon Phillips, who is
from the new one from Car Mechanic.
Yes, I play on that album. I play some organ on it. It's a fantastic record, but I found that, first of all, I play the very first sound on the record on the organ. Yeah. The first sound is an organ, and that's me. And then Simon Phillips comes in on drums. The drummer with The Who.
You couldn't have a better way to start an album.
Yeah, and so that was a fantastic moment for me. And of course, Jonas and I, it's just fantastic. I've played on a fair few of the Car Mechanic records, but this one was really special because it's a really special record, and that was a fantastic moment. But to come back to your question of who do I regret not having worked with, I think that one of the most important ones is Peter Hamill. I never got to work with him. I think
but you got to meet him?
I've met Peter Hamill numerous occasions. I think I could say I vaguely know him. I don't know him well, but I've met him enough to know what kind of person he is. He's a very private person. He's a very focused individual, and he's always worked with an exceedingly small pool of musicians. He's never really branched out into sort of working with loads and loads and loads and loads of different people. It's always been a relatively small group of people that he's worked with. I've asked him if he'd work with me, and he's never accepted that. He's never accepted my offer or my request. No. And fair enough, he's a guy who I will respect till my dying day. I really love the majority. He's just fantastic. I would like to have worked strangely with Neil Morse, because I think he's a great writer of progressive rock music. I also approached him to see if he'd like to work with me, because I'm an atheist, and I don't believe in Christianity or God or anything like that, but I do believe in spirituality, and I do believe in searching for higher purposes in life. And I thought that it would be really good for an atheist and a Christian to work together to discuss the common ground that we would undoubtedly have. But would once again, that was something that he didn't.
Well, you worked with him a lot.
Yeah, Royner got to work with him. Yeah, of course he did. But no, that's never happened. I mean, it might happen. It does never say never and everything. And I think that there was one person who I really would have liked to work to, and I was quite sad about it because he's just retired. And I kind of thought, yeah, it would have been really nice to work with Fish. Because, actually, I was never that big a Marillion fan. Never that big a fan of their music. To me, I always thought they were kind of just a sort of 1980s Genesis, really. I think I liked them more after Fish left. But I really like Fish's politics, man. I mean, like, I got to meet him. In fact, we got locked in a room together by mistake. Just me and Fish in a room behind a stage. We got locked in because there was a band performing on stage,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we couldn't get out. So I ended up having quite a long chat with him, and I really liked him, and I think we got on really well together. And it would have been great to work with him on something, but regrettably, that never happened. And
Yeah.
he's now retiring, and I hope he has a really good retirement because he bloody deserves it. He's a good guy. He's one of the good guys. Is Fish, yeah.
And he, if you would have worked with him, you would have probably a bigger space to put your songwriting, because as a musician, because he only writes the lyrics, and he put the music to all of these collaborators, Mickey Simmons, Jones, all the music part, the music apart from the lyrics.
Well, I
Generally,
would.
the keyboards, the
Mm.
keyboard players with him has a strong input into the material in terms of musical wise, not lyrical wise.
Yeah, well, that's the way it's turned out, But in the end, I mean, I have these dreams and fantasies about who I'd like to work with and everything, but you never know how it'd turn out. I mean, I'd probably
I would love
get.
to see a collaboration with you and John Anderson. He played with Roy too, and
Yeah, he did
he's
play with.
collaborating with some new guys from the band Geeks.
Well, I've obviously for many years I have been, a tremendously disappointed fan of Yes, because to me, you may disagree with me, and it's perfectly okay to disagree with me. The band that I fell in love with really stopped existing in that form many, many years ago, and they never ever did anything, to my mind, that equaled the sheer inventive powerhouse that was their first album as far as Relayer. After Relayer, there were some good albums, like Going for the One was a good album. There were some great parts on Tormato. Not all of it, but some of it was great. Some of I absolutely adored Drama. But from this point onwards, it never quite got to me in the same way. I mean, I enjoyed the 90125 stuff, but I was enjoying a different band. It just wasn't the same group. It had a different order of priorities, and I liked it, but it wasn't that sort of world changing stuff. Then there was a period of sort of like fairly dull records, which I didn't quite get, and then out of the blue came John Anderson, the band Geeks. True. I absolutely love it.
Wow.
When I put that one on, that was a tearjerker. I was just, oh. I haven't heard this for years. Nothing, it was just so lovely. It was like meeting a long lost friend. It just sort of, wow, that's it. That's what I've wanted for all these years. Some of that, and it's nothing new. It's not a great leap forward or anything. It's very, very looking back at the past. But what a past, and it was a fantastic record for me. That True by John Anderson and the band Geeks. I absolutely loved it. So I don't know how you thought about that one. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it was a great record. I think I really enjoyed that one. We're coming to the final part of the interview, and I would like to do some final questions. It's a final short questions,
No
and
problem at all.
it's
Yeah, I hope
not
I haven't talked too long, because I mean, I
yeah.
think I think this has been around about the length of a Lord of the Rings movie, hasn't it? You know, but
You I would like to ask if you choose 5 songs from the tangent from the whole discography to introduce someone who has absolutely no clue or have never heard anything about the band or about your work or doesn't know anything about it, which ones do you think are the most definitive? Which ones do you recommend and why?
I think that, yeah, I would say that the ones that are important, if it was going to be just one, it would be Place in the Queue. Yeah, if that was it, you can only recommend one person to get an overview of what your band is about. Well, I'd say Place in the Queue. And if I had more than one, I would certainly recommend Down and Out in Paris and London, which is my personal favorite songs that I ever wrote are on that one. And probably Proxy. That's a good record. There are quite a few of them that I don't like. There are some which I wish I kind of thought I wish I'd done this better on that record, and there's a couple of them which I thought I wish I'd never made. I wish I'd never made that record. But the thing is between you and me, my friend, I don't actually listen to them once they're done. As soon as they're finished, I forget them. And the only time I'm likely to ever hear a track again is if for some reason we're doing a gig and we need to learn that song. Then I'll have to, first of all, remember which album is that on, then find it, then learn it, and then I hear it again. But I've got an exceedingly good musical memory, in that I don't have to listen to Genesis records anymore, because I know them so well. I can play them in my head. I can just put a Genesis record on and listen to them play it in my head. I don't need a CD or a Walkman, anything. It's just there. I'm quite lucky in that respect. But I used to try practicing it at school, actually. I used to think, well, there's nearly 20 minutes till the end of this lesson, and I know I'll sing my way through The Revealing Science of God by Yes off
Yeah.
Tales from Topographic Oceans. I could just play the whole thing back in my head, and then the bell would ring. Great. That's it. So I don't know these records as well as maybe even you know them. I know them well from the time I recorded them, but a lot of them I haven't heard. Some of them I haven't actually heard in 20 years. It's strange, is that? But that's the way I work, and
Yeah. This interview has been all about you as an artist, but I would like to know, what are you listening to most right now? You don't have accounts of any streaming platform, so I suppose that you hear everything in physical media, CDs or vinyls. And
I've transferred my entire record collection of probably 50 years to that small black box that I'm pointing at there. That's where my music collection is, and I know for a fact that over the past 5 years, since we moved to this house and I put a player downstairs, that the artist I play the most is a 1990s, early 2000s dance act from the UK called Groove Armada, which is and particularly their album, which is called Goodbye Country, Hello Nightclub. And it's an absolutely fantastic record that to me is as important as Dark Side of the Moon, or in the way I listen to and make music. It's almost like musical perfection. And it's a record that if you put it on without knowing the record, you'd put it on and you might think, this is a rap record. I don't like rap, so I'm not going to listen to the rest of it. Well, the first thing is yes, there is rapping on it, but it's not a rap record. And it has so many treasures inside this record. There are so many things happening, so many different things that somehow work so beautifully together. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I also find that there's a lot of Aphex Twin, a lot of Return to Forever I listen to. I like Aphex Twin quite a lot, and I like a music producer by the name of Square Pusher. He's really cool. Very, very interesting guy who makes, you know, kind of drum and bass dance music records, but as well as making all these sort of lo-fi dance music, he can also play bass, rather like Jaco Pastorius, which makes that very interesting. There's a band called Noah who I absolutely adore. I think they're an American group, maybe Canadian, but probably American. There's of course Dirty Loops are a band I really like. Yes, I've been listening to a lot of Italian jazz fusion music, quite a bit of death metal, particularly the sort of earlier kind of trashy stuff like Voivod, Slayer, and Venom, things like that. I like that quite a lot. And I listen to jazz, so all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Final question, definitely the final one. A few days ago, I interviewed Rolling Stone, and he defined his music catalog, his songs, as not mere songs, as a cinematic pieces. I generally ask to my interviewers, to the interviewees, if you had to define your work as a composer and lyricist in one word, a phrase, what would it be?
Well, actually,
and for him, I changed the question a little bit. I asked if he could define his music. What movie would it be? And I asked that same question for you. If you could define your work as a composer and as a lyricist in one film, one movie, what would it be?
The film straight away would be, it's not a particularly famous film, but it's called Babel. And it's a film that stars Brad Pitt's in it. It's a beautiful film that tells 5 stories in one film. It's one of those, you know, but the stories are all somehow linked. Each one's got a different set of characters, but they're all linked by one single object, and that object is kind of the MacGuffin of the film. But it's a film that's all about communication, and it's a film that's all about self-discovery and forgiveness and the ability to talk to each other. And that is probably the most inspiring film I've ever seen in my life. It's an absolutely beautiful film with music in it by some of my favorite artists, including Richie Sakamoto, but most importantly, Earth, Wind and Fire, who are my favorite. I love Earth, Wind and Fire, and they're in the film. The music's in the film. There's a fantastic club sequence in it with Fatboy Slim doing some stuff in it. It's an amazing film. It's set in Morocco. It's set in Mexico. It's set in Japan. The great thing is about it, it's not set in America. It's got no bits of it are in America at all, but it's still a Hollywood movie. Really, really high production values. Fantastic. As for a description of my music, Royner has the best word there. There is no other way to describe it. We're basically a cinematic music band. That's what we do. My main object is to create stories. I'm a storyteller with music, and I'm a social commentator with music, and that's basically we make stories which are fictional, and we make stories that are documentaries too. So that's it. That's what the Tangent does.
Yeah. And thank you very much. I have no words to describe how I'm really grateful and how I'm really bloody, as you say here, you there in England. How I'm a bloody happy to having the chance to talk with you, to see you.
Bloody happy,
with
yeah.
confidence. Really, really happy. Thank you very much. Feel free to return other times as soon as you get this new record released and other projects. We're gonna talk more here.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you very much, Andy. Really
thank you
admire.
very much for having me for so long. I mean, I have just seemed to have talked forever. I'm going to have a drink after this, but look, it's been really nice to talk to somebody as young and enthusiastic as yourself about the music that I make and the music that I love and have loved for all this time. I hope you have many, many happy years of discovering fantastic new music for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said exactly the same for you. It's really an honor, really a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'll to return many, many.
Much indeed. It's been a pleasure to be
Bye bye,
involved.
man.
All right. Your best wishes. Take care.